Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we'll be talking about a topic that people were talking about this topic, about a month ago or so, I guess you could say. And I didn't want to, talk in about it because I already knew my answer, I already knew everything. But I just wanted to talk from my perspective, however, of what I feel like is skill in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not the question of is there skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! I believe that there is skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've talked to many of you guys on this channel, and many of you guys have that same opinion, especially if you're an older school player. The question I feel should be asked instead, is there skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is how much skill is in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where is the skill located in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Things of this nature. Not just Yu-Gi-Oh! Is skillful or not skillful. No, that's not the case. I feel that it's how much skill is in the game and where is this skill in the game. And that is what we'll be talking about today, guys. So sit back, grab some popcorn, because this may be a long video, I believe, because I've literally thought about this and literally sat in the mirror talking to myself, trying to figure out how I wanted to approach this topic and in a positive light. So for me, personally, I believe that there's skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! For sure. There definitely is. Be it playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And especially deck building. I feel that there's different keys to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To becoming a good player in general. Skill and knowledge go hand in hand in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It is your yin and yang. You can't have one without the other. You can't be skillful and not be knowledgeable to be a good player. You can't be. Because if you don't know the knowledge, you won't know how to use the cards to the most effectiveness way. And you can't have knowledge without skill. You may know all about these things about Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you can't implement them in time of crisis when you're playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And using them at the proper time, then it's useless. You need both skill and knowledge to be a good player, to be a well-rounded good player. I feel like being a well-rounded good player overall means you'll be a better player in the game for a longer period of time than just trying to be a good player in certain formats. Being a well-rounded player means you'll probably last longer in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You'll be more knowledgeable, you'll be more skillful, and all these different things. So where does the skill really interlie in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's in deck building, where you definitely see skill and knowledge of the game really shine. Being a skillful deck builder can mean a whole bunch of different things. Now, I can say this from the perspective is I've built many different types of decks, guys. Many different types of decks, as you've seen on this channel throughout the years. I've done everything from Crab Turtle to meta decks like Cosmos and Burning Abyss and things that people were like, ooh, I don't like that deck. Things of that nature, I've done all these variations from casual to semi-competitive to full-blown meta-defining decks. I've done these things on the channel and I've profiled these decks for you. And I always feel that each player out there can always give their little input, that's in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And deck building, I found, is where really skill and knowledge can lie. You can try little text cards out because maybe you played that card a long time ago in a deck. Maybe you played that card, this is a water-based deck, but I remember playing that card, like a couple months ago, a couple years ago in my other deck I had way back in the day. So I can try that card out here. Oh, it's a good fit. I'll keep it in the deck. There's my little tech for the deck to try it out. People say, well, you just copy and paste different, competitive players' decks. You can always do that, but I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you do that, you're probably not going to be as successful as you think you will be, because each player I find throughout the game of being in this game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Plays their deck a little bit differently. Each player uses a card differently. Some players don't like trap cards because they like very fast decks. Some players like trap cards because they like protecting the castle. They like stopping their opponent's effects, not just having a glass cannon where they just go off and if things don't happen good, they fall apart very quickly. So different players have different playing styles. Some players are more anti-meta, some players like playing more meta. Some people like facing the meta, some people like not facing the meta. Different players have different ways, and you can see what type of player they are by just looking at their deck. How do they like playing their deck? How do they use their deck? You may look at a card list and they may be very similar, but each card that you draw, different players will use those cards differently. You can definitely tell this in scapegoat format, but also in the current format. When do I use Pod Desires? People say, well, Pod Desires is not a skillful card. You just activate it, banish 2, and draw too. Yeah, I agree with you on that. But when do you use it? Do you wait till you draw your cards? Maybe say, do I really need that Desires play right now? No, let me draw a couple more cards. Oh, I'm in a tight pinch. Now I'm going to activate that Desires. Oh, look, I got a combo play. Now I'm going to go off. So saying things like that, it's when to activate cards. That's skill. When to use things. Now you may say, well, Stratos activates, normal summon Stratos, search. Oh, that's skillful. No, it's not. But how you use that card and what card you search, that's skill. Saying, okay, good example here with Gravekeeper's Assailant, a 1-of card in Gravekeepers. Sometimes I search that card not because I need it right now, but knowing if my opponent makes a strong monster, Gravekeeper's Assailant could out that board. Like with Sheehan, they may not have Sheehan on the board right now. Back in the day when I was using GKs versus 6 Sams, but if I search that Assailant, I'd be like, okay, he summons that Sheehan. I'm going to normal summon that Assailant, put it in defense position, and run over it. That is how you can skill and knowledge. Knowing your opponent's deck, knowing how to interact with it, can be very key in the concept of deck building. Now, skill also in playing decks is actually very true. Now, people may say, "Wow, there's no skill in playing decks. There's no skill in even playing Exodia decks." And I will agree to you, but I'm going to say this: even Exodia does take some skill. I know I'm going to get crucified for saying that, but it's true because you're talking from a guy that earlier this year built an Exodia deck from scratch. Exodia is a deck that does take some skill, knowing how to interact, use your cards. And it does take some luck, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Does take some skill and does take some luck as well. And does take some knowledge. It takes a whole bunch of different things. Exodia is one of those example decks. It does take some skill because when you're building that deck, what spell cards are you going to put in to get the most benefit? People say, well, you just play, do this and do that. Yes. But believe me, it took me about a week to just understand what spell cards would really work in the deck. And, after work, not doing 24 hours playing Exodia, but, every evening playing Exodia is what I'm trying to say here. But literally trying to figure out what would work, what would not work, what worked for me, what spell cards I really like, what cards really work with the deck, what meshed well together and gave me a consistency in the Exodia deck that I liked very much. Little tech things like Battle Fader and, the Bamboo Sword attaching to my opponents. Versatility was key. So knowing that and my knowledge and how I like making my decks very well rounded, I crafted that deck from scratch pretty much. Start with 5 Exodia pieces, looked at what other people did, added like 10, 15 different cards that nobody else was running, and built the deck from scratch. So yes, it does take some skill to learn how to play it properly, but each deck has a different skill curve, literally. Exodia may be down here, but playing DDDs, if you've never played DDDs before and I've played the deck, it takes a higher skill curve than playing Exodia. And GKs may have this much skill curve, and 6 Sams may have this much, and Corporal Demise may have that much, and different levels of skill a deck may have. Each deck has a different skill curve, I call it, because it takes a certain knowledge and playing with the deck enough times to understand all the different combos, how the deck works. When Blue Eyes White Dragon came out originally, people were playing a whole bunch of different builds originally when the set dropped in Shining Victories, but I looked at the deck and I said, I know how I want to approach this deck, I know how I want to play the deck, because I've played this deck enough and I've played it in the past. I have that knowledge and that skill of playing the deck in different ways to play the deck. So like I said again, you're going to keep hearing me say skill and knowledge because they go intertwining with each other and everything. Some people mistake knowledge for skill and skill for knowledge, but they're very similar. It's that there's not even a gray area. They go very intertwining with each other. They're very knit together. Now, luck does play a very important part in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. And people don't want to acknowledge it. I mean, it's kind of like, what's that song, 8 Mile by Eminem, 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% power of will. We used to sing that in football practice and track practice back in the day. Back in the 2000s, man. Oh my gosh, it was 6-7 years ago almost now. Oh my gosh, I feel old. But saying all of that, there is a luck-based thing to skill. Sometimes you get Exodia, sometimes you don't get Exodia. Sometimes you get the key, you top deck that key card, sometimes you don't top deck that key card. Sometimes you draw that one Garnet you had with Brilliant Fusion and you cry. things of this nature happen in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just luck, which is kind of the reason I love Yu-Gi-Oh! It does take some skill, it does take knowledge, and it does have an element of luck based in the game, because your opponent could draw the nuts, but you have all the outs to your opponent's plays, and vice versa. It's very fun, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very unique game in that aspect. People say, well, this game has more skill, this game has more luck. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! For what it is. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! For what it was, and I'm going to continue to enjoy the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! As it proceeds into new things and new mechanics. I'll enjoy it, because Konami, always tries to make this game have different elements, and the way it's made and the way the game's evolved over the years, I thoroughly enjoy it. Be good formats, bad formats. People will always complain about a format. It may be vanilla. Even back in the day, people say, "Oh, the older decks back in the day took a lot more skill." That wasn't completely true, and I will explain to you why. Does Delinquent Duo take skill? Does Forceful Sentry take skill? Does Pot of Greed draw 2 cards take skill? Does Regeki, Dark Hole, Sakuretsu Armor, Mirror Force activated on the proper time? Does Jinzo, does locking down your opponent's traps take skill? Does Call the Haunted? Does all of these broken freaking cards like BLS, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Yadagaratsu take skill to build and play? No, they did not. So people say that. I say, well, you must have been playing Vanilla Beatdown, because I recall a different Yu-Gi-Oh! Back then as taking skillful. Now, I will say playing things like Scapegoat format and everything, using your resources, playing around with your opponent, being knowledgeable about what your opponent has, what they play, how they're playing it, and how you use your resources. Yes, that does take skill. That element does take skill, but a lot of those cards back then, you also have to remember, were very, very broken. Delinquent Duo, pay 1,000, rip 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. What's skillful about that? Please tell me what. Metamorphosis with a Scapegoat to make a Thousand-Eyes trick that could just steal monsters. Snatch and Steal? Yeah, that's a skillful card right there, boys. Things of that nature. People say, well, that was the skillful days of Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember a different Yu-Gi-Oh! I do recall that there was skill. I do recall, it was player interaction and how you played your deck and used your resources. But I don't recall it all being as skillful as people may think it was. Yeah, believe me. Have a Horus the Black Flame Dragon out with 2 Solemn Judgments in your back row. That's skillful, right? Yeah, Horus level 8 on the field. Negate your spells, negate anything you do, I win. Yeah, that's skill. So, saying all these things, guys, there is a skill in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! The game is skillful. The game is luck-based. The game takes knowledge to know. It takes many different levels to be a good, well-rounded player in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And to win a YCS, to do good at a regionals, to be a good player in this game for a long period of time, you need to hone and work on your skills consistently, because the game is always changing and always evolving. So that's what I got to say about that, guys. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does take skill. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does take knowledge. And to be a good player, you need all these things and even some other things I haven't mentioned. Be knowledgeable. Having played the game for a long time, you know the card pool. You know what you can pull from. You know what are good cards. You can evaluate cards efficiently. You can look at a card and say, I see your potential. You're a junk card. Throw you in the commons box. You have potential. I'll put you in a nice little sleeve for now because you have potential. That's what I mean. That is something that's very true. And growing up in an era back in the day when we didn't really have internet that much, in the early Yu-Gi-Oh! Days, you could easily pinpoint who was the skillful player and who wasn't, because you could see the way they played. Now, to comment on Yu-Gi-Oh! Being money driven, it's always been that way to some degree. But I'm not going to really touch into it that much in this video, because that's not what this video is about. I will say that money does play a part in what cards you can play, but if you have a job and you have an income and you're able to manage your resources and your money intake and put some money aside to play this game that you apparently enjoy, then it's very easy to play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I would say. And these little things that you play in real life, it makes the game more enjoyable. And I love this game. I'm passionate about it. Why would I still be playing it freaking, what now, 13, 14 years later, since 2002? I mean, I'm playing this game for a long time, guys. I've been through all the formats. I've seen it all. I've seen the elephant, as they say when you go to war. I've seen the elephant. So I've always enjoyed this game, and I do believe it takes a lot of different things to be a good player. But till next time, guys, take care. Have fun dueling. Good luck dueling. And I'll see all of you guys next time. Take care, everybody. I apologize for the lighting. it's kind of dark right now, so I only have this one little light and my light over there. So yeah, I do apologize about that. You probably see shadows in the background. But take care, everybody, the next time. Good luck dueling to all of you.